Welcome to the How to Love Living podcast. My name is Jeremy, and this podcast is about living your best life and tips and tricks and all that fun stuff on just growing and being the best you that you can be, and really working on understanding and having a happy life as much as anyone can have a happy life. Well, Happy New Year's! So we finally made it. We made it out of 2020 and we're in 2021. We survived. It's been a crazy year. It's been a tumultuous year, and now we are here. So 2021, last week's episode, we talked about setting goals for the New Year's. This week's episode, we're talking about your goals and progress, and just talking a bit about how to achieve your goals and measuring progress and staying on task and setting yourself up for success as you're working through your goals. The first thing I'll say with goals is last week we discussed a bit about SMART goals, making them, things that are achievable, timely, that are things that you can actually do for 2021. Now, what we want to talk about is just how do we navigate through that? So, the first thing I'll say is celebrate the wins. So, celebrate the things that you're really achieving with your goals. So, if you went for that run that morning, celebrate it, and be happy that you made it out. And then if you miss the next day, go, well, miss the next day, I'm going to put on my running gear and we'll get out the next day after. And just celebrate those wins. Now, one book I want to bring up in this episode is Habits by Charles Duhigg. This is an excellent book. And what this book talks about is just habits, how to form them, and how to maintain them. It takes 66 days to form a habit on average. And so what that means is the repetitive task of doing that habit as often as you want to achieve it, that habit takes 66 days to kind of become ingrained into your lifestyle. I would recommend reading Habits by Charles Duhigg just to get the understanding and kind of the underlying ways to work with habits and kind of get educated from that perspective. What I'll also add to just habits is one of the things I believe he discusses in there is when you're setting a habit, replace, whatever you're resetting to something else. So let's talk about that a little bit. So let's say that you're trying to set a habit of eating healthy. And so you're like, okay, let's step back for a moment. So you set a goal of eating healthy. So what you say is, I'm not going to eat out Monday through Friday each week. I'm going to cook dinner at home each of those nights. So what the argument is to see success and reinforce success. It's a give and take scenario. So the way you do that then is you say, okay, if I am going to eat at home and eat healthy, the thing I'm going to take then is I'm going to be able to play my video game in the evenings. That's just an example. So you make these trade-offs where, if you were going and eating out and then playing your video game, well, now you're saying, well, I'm going to eat healthy at home and my reward is going to be playing my video game and not feeling guilty about it. So it's kind of just these, exchanges that kind of help reinforce the habit, and then you're replacing kind of the bad habit with something that will gratify you if you can achieve the regular habit. And I used to do this a lot when I was younger. So when I was younger, I would say, okay, I gotta do laundry. Like, laundry is one of those things I hated to do. And I was like, well, if I do laundry, then I'm gonna watch a movie tonight. So just doing exchanges like that help you accomplish whatever goal you have. So think about that as you're setting up habits. Of course, last week we talked about setbacks. Work on the day to day. So work from day to day. Don't focus on the overall picture. Just focus on one day, put one foot in front of the other to achieve the habit. Work through and let yourself go if you miss a day. But really strive hard that next day to say, okay, I missed yesterday, but I'm going to get in there and I'm going to jump back onto the, bandwagon. I'm going to get in there and I'm going to do it. And challenges will present themselves. There will be roadblocks. There will be things that happen in life just naturally that will kind of impede on your habits. So what I'll say to that is allow for them. Give space for them. Be okay with them. Let the roadblocks do their thing and then get back onto the habit. So don't let individual missteps or individual challenges stop you from achieving your goals. Just day in and day out, step by step, work on it. And just put mental effort into it. And just allow for space where there is failure. And don't beat yourself up about the failure. Just get up, do it the next day. For 2021, celebrate another year of your life. Allow for the celebration and give yourself space to really say, hey, we made it through 2020 and we're going to make it through 2021, regardless of the challenges. Put yourself in a place that you can be succinct enough to work through adversity and work through challenges that come up, and your habits and goals are kind of met even though those adversity and challenges are happening. I think that if you can see success, well, I don't think, I know that if you can see success in overcoming some adversity and challenges, it builds upon itself, because then you can say, well, if I overcame this, I'm going to be able to overcome future ones that are coming up. So sometimes those adversity and challenges can be very scary. Sometimes they can be very overwhelming. And a lot of times you have to just face them, put one foot in front of the other, and navigate through it. And hopefully in the end, you'll have an experience that's joyful. If not, you'll have an experience that you survived, and it will give you strength, because you can survive this, then you can survive something else even worse. So allow for that strength to build up in yourself and celebrate it. Once you've overcome a challenge, celebrate it. Give yourself a second and pat yourself on the back and just say, Jeremy, I achieved and overcame this challenge. Forgiveness is one of the things that I think is going to be, I know for me, forgiveness is a big thing. Really, one thing my therapist talks about a bit, and I think this is very true for a lot of us, is, those of us that are hard on ourselves, we don't have a lot of empathy for ourselves, and we don't have a lot of love for ourselves. And I think that we tolerate ourselves, but we don't have that empathy and love. And there's underlying things that have caused that in our life, or that mental mindset that could contribute to it at least. And so it makes it very difficult if you're in those circumstances to give yourself forgiveness. One of the things my therapist and I talk about a bit is seeing that inner child inside of you. Kind of picture that small child. Think of yourself back when you're like 6 or 7 years old, and have a relationship with that child and love that child and be forgiving of that child. And I think what the whole message is this is, although we're in adult bodies and although we are doing adult things, we're going through and living our lives and blah, 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 there's still a child inside of us. And that child, when we don't forgive ourselves, we're not forgiving that child for their mistakes. And I think if you can get into that mental mindset of seeing that child and embracing and loving that child and helping that child, being the adult and helping that child as the child is going through challenges and going through different things is very helpful. I think that especially if you grew up in a tough childhood where that empathy and love wasn't given as much as is needed, it can be tough to have empathy for that child when you're an adult. And so one of the challenges we all have is reconciling that and seeing that inner child in ourselves and being loving for that child and saying, you know what, you're not perfect, I'm not perfect, but I'm the adult here and we're going to make it through this. And that's something I think is pretty powerful. And this is something you definitely should explore with a therapist if it's something that if you want a relationship with that inner child inside of you, I think it is good to talk to someone and kind of go through how you feel about that person. How do you feel about you? Understand you're human. Understand that humans are not perfect. We're all just doing the best we can with what we have. And I sincerely believe that. I sincerely believe that every individual is doing the best they can with what they have. And there's mistakes, there's greed, there's all the nastiness that kind of comes with humanity. But there's also beauty in that humanity. There's beauty in the imperfections of humans. And so I think it is incumbent upon each human to be the best human they can be. And I think that it's important to say, I'm worthy of these things. I'm worthy of achieving my goals. I'm worthy of failure, that I can fail and I can forgive myself. And even if others don't forgive you, that's their issue. And that's one thing that we should talk about a bit. It's not in my show notes. I take show notes each week, and this is kind of deviating from my show notes. So we're going to kind of just talk about it a bit, is the influence of others on your lives and how that impacts both your life quality and impacts your ability to achieve things. And if you can gain the skill set to not be overly influenced by others, either peer pressure or what have you, teach me that skill set. I want to learn it. So you should be teaching me how to do that, because I do get overly influenced by others, and someone can make a comment and I do, really consider to the nth degree their comment. And the problem is then the situation I find myself in is, well, I got the inner dialogue going. So now, I've got, well, Jeremy, should you do this? Jeremy, should you do that? Jeremy, blah, 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 right? So my mind always races like that. And I work diligently to, kind of pick and choose the things that I am listening to that's coming up in my head. And then as well, being at peace with certain circumstances that I can't change, that no matter what I do and no matter how much my mind races, those circumstances aren't going to change. So being at peace with that, but then add on to that. So add on from all this mental complexity that's going on in each of our individual heads, add on some off comment someone said, or add on, some pressure someone's putting onto you. And it can be pretty insurmountable sometimes. Like it can seem like, there's additional voices in my head. There's now every, you know, peanut gallery person is out there giving their thoughts and opinions on, whatever circumstances. So the things that have worked for me is setting boundaries. And so, a lot of that is thank you for your feedback. No, thank you. You know what I mean? Like you just say, well, I understand that's a challenge for me, but I will work on that on my own. Don't, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to kind of navigate through peer pressure. And the reason we have peer pressure is because that helped us fit into society. So when we're a group of 100 people and our lives depended on social cohesion, then peer pressure played heavily. And having the ability to meet peer pressure was very important for your survival. But it's not anymore. Like, we live in a large society that most our needs are met, and it does not mean peril if we don't meet the needs of others. And so it's one of those kind of instincts to please everyone that I struggle with. And setting boundaries, being judicious about what I'm taking in. And sometimes, and this sucks, but sometimes I have to get downright angry to kind of say no. And I think I'm a very nice and sweet person. And I think that when I do say no, it kind of shocks people. But, I would hope that then, that ends up being something that when I do get to that point, they listen. And typically they do. But on the flip side, then, what I'm putting out into the world, what I'm putting out to my peers, I really try to be judicious in not doing the thing to them that they're doing to me. And I don't want to do that because I don't want to create that mental anguish that is being created in them, if they are susceptible to. Because there are individuals in our society that do not care. They don't care what people think. And I get jealous of that. I get really jealous of that personality type. And, there are points when I really wish that I just did not care. I really wish that I could just not care what other people think. Unfortunately, it's something that I haven't learned to navigate through. And so when people make comments or people say something, I care intensely because I want to be the best person I can be. But I'm already the best person I can be. And I think I'm a pretty darn good person. And so it's tough. It's a tough thing to really do this. But, this goes back to my earlier kind of comments is this stuff is a lifelong journey. There's no perfect person. There's these gurus that we listen to, the heads of states, the people that have all the solutions, they're struggling just as much as any of us are. And yeah, they figured something out, but they're just as human as any of us. And, that's just the reality of it is the suffering we go through is the suffering our ancestors went through, and it's the suffering that our peers are going through. And although we would like to think that each of our individual circumstances are very, very unique, they're not. There's people that have it worse, and there's people that have it better, and there's a lot of people going through the same things you're going through that you don't know and will never know. And I find solace in that. Like, I really do find peace in knowing that I'm not alone in some of the mental suffering I go through. And, I don't find peace that other people are suffering worse. I think that's terrible, but it's out of my control. I can't help them. What I can do is I can create things like this podcast, and I can do things to be there, donate money, and just be there for people. But in the end, our ability to engender actual change in others' lives is very limited. It's limited by where they're at. It's limited by, what is our society kind of driving towards and that sort of stuff. So I would just say to myself and to, this is basically about me at the moment, but what I'll say to myself is really kind of when people are making just off comments or they're saying something to me directly, don't take it personally. Like, treat it just like you would feedback in your head. So if my head is saying, Jeremy, you failed an X, no, I missed that turn, but I'm going to get back on the horse. So no, I haven't failed. If someone externally says, Jeremy, you failed on X, no, I'm going to get back on the horse. I'm going to be successful. Like, don't, I got to really work on not, being so judicious about, or I need to work on being judicious about what I'm taking in from other people. And definitely I want to achieve the things that, that are good, that are goals I have or things I want to achieve in life. But I don't necessarily need to get, you know, just get kind of derailed because someone made an off comment or someone said something. And so that's a challenge I'm working through right now. It's just, how do I navigate through those sensitivities? And, you know, we all have our challenges in life. Believe me, we all have our challenges in life. And I know every single person, single person I know, I recognize the different challenges they go through. And some of them are absolutely heartbreaking and heart wrenching. And some of them are so complex. And, that's just the nature of humanity. And that's the nature of our circumstances. But what I'll argue is slowly, methodically, almost to an insanity level of just like moving forward, just every day getting up and one foot in front of the other and facing the challenges you can face and, putting a list together of challenges that you're going to have to work on eventually, but you can't do it right now and you're not going to be able to do it in the near future. But just one thing after another and one step in front of the other. And what I really believe is this, and I believe this because I know this, is when I look back on myself 10 years ago and I kind of look at where I was then, I'm not anywhere near the same person I was 10 years ago. And I think none of us are. I think that as we navigate through life, we change. And the change is both personality wise, it's in who we are, how we exist in the world. And the reason I'll say these changes happen is because over time we overcome challenges that change our character and change our view of the world and change how we approach the world and change like so much of how we interface with the world. But the problem with our society currently is we have a very fast food mentality. We want to be able to go pick up at, pay for it at one window and then pick it up instantly in the next window. And unfortunately, our brains and life doesn't work like that, so any kind of things that you're looking to do are not just going to be fast food mentality stuff. It's in for the long haul and it's step by step. And, sometimes it can even become arduous. And when it does become arduous, just stop thinking about it, So like for me, sometimes, running back when I was running it seemed arduous. Like I didn't like the time it took and blah, blah, blah. But then what I did is I looked for opportunities for fun out of the running. So, like, two areas that I really enjoyed about running is I would, one, pick either a really good audiobook or a really good running list that just brought me joy that I could get excited for. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be able to work more on my book, or, oh, I get to re-listen to all these songs I love, and they're preserved only for running, right? So that's one way that I kind of bring joy into it. And then the other way is when you've been running. So I've run marathons and all that sort of stuff. And when you're running and you get into like miles 6 or 7 and it's very repetitive, you almost get like a high. And it's really weird because you just feel completely in flow. And it's so wonderful feeling. Like it's a very wonderful feeling when you can get to that point because there's no pain and there's no you like it's almost like your mind is disconnected from your body and your body's doing the motions but your mind is just in like a very elated in a peaceful, it's amazing, it's an amazing feeling. And I want to get back to that feeling. I want to be able to go on runs again where I go on a long run and I hit that. And I don't know how it works, but there is a point during the run, especially longer runs, where you're kind of in sync and at one with that very moment. And it's amazing. And you feel it and you feel the lightness of it and it's phenomenal. And so look for those things in the monotony. Look for things to look forward to or create like, exchanges where you get something that will bring you pleasure temporarily while you're going through the thing that you hate because it's crappy. Yeah, that's just how it works. Anyway, so we've covered a lot of topics today, and I apologize for that. I try to keep these topics pretty on task, and it's funny because I titled this episode "Staying on Task," and it's just there's a lot of challenges to staying on task, and there's a lot of things that you got to consider, and so I covered a lot of them. I do want to cover more of what we talked about in this episode in future episodes. I do want to talk more about the influence others have on us, and I do want to talk about the mind games and the inner thought processes that we have and discuss where I've seen successes in my life. And hopefully they're things that I can share with you. So, and I think that if you've been listening to this podcast enough, you're getting kind of a theme. There's no instant fix in this stuff. And there's no like point where you are not learning anymore. Like I'm anticipating I'm going to be learning for the rest of my life, like I've said. And I actually look forward to that. I actually look forward to a 70-year-old Jeremy that is very, very self-aware and very, very in tune with the world and understands a lot more of the complexity that I understand now. But as I get older, so the caveat to that is as I get older, the more I know, the less I know. And I think it's just because this world is a very complex place. So when I was 20, I thought, I got this whole thing figured out. This whole world, I kind of understand it all. Simple. It is not. It seems simple, but as you progress, as you overcome challenges, as you navigate from one point to another in your life, there's just more stuff. Like it doesn't ever end. And I don't want to sell that it ends. I don't want to sell that there is a place where you're just done, where you've reached the apex and you're just like, you have that moment. That's not going to happen. I don't believe that. If someone has had that where they've reached the apex where it's just like, angels have come down to the heaven and everything's perfect, I would like to know about that because I don't believe that happens. What I believe happens is we have all the amazing experiences in our youth. We have all the amazing experiences in our 20s. We have all the amazing experiences in our 30s. We have all the amazing experiences in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 100s, blah, blah, blah. And that's just life. Like, there's always going to be something new, something to learn, something to do, a relationship to work through, mental stuff to work through, challenges in life to work through. It's never going to be boring. And I look forward to it. I know that some of these circumstances and challenges can be challenging, but I look forward to it. So as you're kind of navigating, setting goals and doing things as these challenges come up, embrace them and enjoy them a little bit. Of course, COVID-19 is terrible, but there are challenges that are coming out of COVID-19 that I'm embracing. Like, being home all the time is something I don't like, but I'm embracing it and I'm taking opportunities to do new things from that. And so learning to do that, I think, is really good. It's a really good skill set to go through and, be able to say, okay, here's the challenge. What am I going to do with it? Like, how am I going to make the best of this challenge? Anyway, this has been Jeremy. This has been How to Love Living podcast. If you have feedback, you can email me, contact@howtoloveliving.com. If you have any questions or you just want to chat, definitely email me, or you can go to my website, howtoloveliving.com, and there's a contact tab there. There's also the blog where I'm posting kind of the information about the podcast. I am working on getting more into the socials, so as we move forward and I get more episodes under my belt, then I'm going to start kind of promoting the podcast more and promoting it on YouTube and that sort of stuff as my goals kind of laid out for 2021. In the meantime, take care of yourself, love the ones around you, give them a hug, and give yourself a hug. And I will see you in the next episode. This has been How to Love Living podcast.